All righty, the final wild card game is almost upon us. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Buffalo Bills are still going on. But before we talk about this Philadelphia Eagles stuff, there is a lot to discuss around the National Football League and a lot to laugh about from this weekend of wild card football. So let's get to it with another edition of Football with Faria.
It's time for Football with Faria.
You got to get the offense right, and you got to be able to be aggressive. They put up 14 against the secondary. That is driving me up a freaking wall right now.
Now here's your host, Nick Faria.
All right, it's Monday night. We've got one more wild card game to go, and it's the one that a lot of people are talking about. Philadelphia Eagles against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coming at you in just about an hour and 10 minutes, hour 15 or so, depending on the pregame stuff and all the stuff going on. But first, let's talk about wild card weekend. First off, for those of you that are coming on, thank you. Football with Faria. I am your host, Nick Faria, reaching out, talking to you daily throughout the week to talk about the ins and outs of what's going on across the National Football League. And there was a lot that happened this weekend. There was a lot that happened. And quite frankly, there was a lot of hilarity that happened this weekend, wasn't there? I mean, we can all laugh. Jet fans out there, you guys want to call in and laugh, comment about how bad the Dolphins looked on Saturday. Personally, me, we all know my fandom. We all know the people that I root for. And the fact that the Dallas Cowboys looked as bad as they did, boy, it doesn't get any better than that, does it? Doesn't get any better than that. Dallas walks in as the 2 seed, thinking that they can win the title. I thought that they were going to be a dangerous team this year. I thought this could potentially finally be the year. I'm always terrified of the Dallas Cowboys. They're the one team I don't want to deal with, ever. Ever. They are who they are. They've kicked Philadelphia's ass so many times in the playoffs. And they went out as a 2 seed at home where they haven't lost in 2 years. 2 years they haven't lost at home. And then they go into a playoff game against Jordan Love in his first playoff game against a Packers team that's the youngest in football. And get blown out. Oh my God. It doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than that. Listen, we can say, oh, Nick, come on. How could you be taking happiness out of the Cowboys' pain? Think about them. You still have a playoff game yourself. What happens if Philadelphia loses in that game? I don't care. I don't give a rat's ass. I just don't. Because if there's one thing that I've seen this year is that the Eagles are not winning the Super Bowl. I have come to terms with that. I understand that that's not going to happen. They're probably going to lose tonight. We'll talk about that pregame kicking off in about an hour. But they're probably losing tonight. And considering the last month of ridiculous, stupid shit that they've pulled, wouldn't surprise me. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they won tonight on the road in the rain against a team that's playing a lot better than them. Wouldn't surprise me. I've come to terms with it. But the one thing I will never, ever get tired of, ever, is the Dallas Cowboys losing when they should win. And there's nothing you can do to tell me otherwise. Because that was the most hilarious playoff game I've ever seen in my entire life. You have a Cowboys group that was talking about it being different. Dak Prescott won the division and said, I'm thinking about a bigger trophy. I'm not wearing the division title hats. I want another trophy. I'm wearing Louis Vuitton because LV is where the Super Bowl is going to be at. That might have been Dak Prescott's worst game ever. It might have been his worst game ever. And this guy's going to ask for 55 million, maybe even 60. He had a career of the year this year. Go get every penny you can get, guy. Oh my God. Everything about yesterday was incredible. Absolutely incredible. There was nothing I did yesterday that topped that. I had my in-laws over. It was a great time. They helped set up a nice little TV for us. Brittany, my wife, made an excellent Greek dinner. It was awesome. And then we watched the Cowboys game. And the entire time I'm freaking out. I don't want the Cowboys to win. I want no success to happen to the Dallas Cowboys. If there's one team that I don't want any success with, it's that. Sorry. And they were down 7-0. And then it was 14-0. And then it was 20-0. And then it was 27-0. Can't ask for more than that. And the beautiful thing is, I don't know who it was, but there were some people that were saying that Dak Prescott fought valiantly in that game. 400 yards passing, 2-3 touchdown passes. And then they did the math about the stats accumulated in the final 7 minutes. And they found out that Dak Prescott threw for over 250 yards within the 6-minute mark when they were down by 30. The ultimate stat pattern. The ultimate stat pattern. Absolutely incredible. And it will not affect my mood today. I have a feeling the Eagles are going to lose. But as long as the Cowboys don't win it and we are eliminated, okay. Okay. I have no problem rooting for the Lions. I have no problem Buffalo, Detroit, Baltimore. Any of those guys win. I have no problem Green Bay winning. I have no problem. I know a lot of Eagle fans hate San Francisco right now. I have no problem if San Francisco wins it. It's not the end of the world. They're not all right. They're not rivals. They're playoff rivals now, but they're not actually rivals. They're not actually rivals. But I got to say, the one thing, there wasn't going to be a lot of things that pissed me off going into today. Because again, I have a feeling the Eagles are going to lose. I'm hoping for the best, but expecting the worst, if you will. And then that faith got tested to the nth degree this morning. And we're going to get to that in a little bit about recent comments, recent posts from the Philadelphia Inquirer and ESPN detailing some of the bigger issues surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles right now. And we can't laugh at the Cowboys all day. Can't do it all day. I'd love to. Can't do it. You got your game to focus on. But there was a lot of other stuff, too, surrounding the NFC East, right? Talk about the anonymous sources Philadelphia is dealing with. What's going on with the New York Giants? Holy moly. And I will say this. This does pertain to the Jets as well. You Jets fans that are watching, you may not think it pertains to you. But what happened and what came out today at the New York Daily News by Pat Leonard, it implicates the Jets. It implicates the Jets big time in a way that maybe a lot of people didn't expect. And I hope gives you guys a little solace to recognize that maybe not everything is bad about the current Jets regime. Maybe not everything. Again, Football with Faria here. Myself, Nick Faria, taking you up probably another, I don't know. We'll see how the comments go. We'll see how the calls go. We'll go through it. You guys have a call or question, feel free to reach out. A lot to talk about today, a lot to discuss. And obviously a busy wild card weekend. Happy for the city of Detroit. Happy for Detroit, man. I have a best friend who's a quasi-Lions fan, as I call it. He's a Lions fan, but he just started rooting for them a couple of years ago. And he's great guy. His name's Ben. And he was rooting for him, cheering for him hard. Very happy that he can see a playoff win. Very happy. Very happy for the city of Detroit. Awesome to see. Kansas City at home takes care of business. C.J. Stroud showing that he's a top 10 quarterback already in a playoff game against a Super Bowl MVP, whether we think highly of Flacco or not. And by the way, really quick, yeah, that's Joe Flacco. That was Jets Joe Flacco on Wild Card Weekend. So for you Jet fans out there that were thinking that the team should absolutely go after Joe Flacco and they would have the same results as the Cleveland Browns, think again. Think again. Let's breathe a little bit. Let's breathe a little bit. But the big story today, outside of everything going on with Philadelphia, is what's going on in New York with the Giants. Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, came out at a very, I'm not saying it's a hit piece because it's not really a hit piece, but it's a very honest look with multiple sources as to why the regime under Brian Daboll took a turn for the worse. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. Essentially, and we're going to get to some of the minutia in a little bit about this article, but essentially, Brian Daboll has made life very difficult for assistants and coaches in the New York Giants system. So much so that the general manager, Joe Shane, has been listening onto some of these games to see how bad it's gotten. Is Brian Daboll difficult to work with? Certainly sounds like it. And it's really to everybody. I mean, he pushed Wink Martindale out, right? We know that. Wink's looking for a new job. Hope he comes to Philly. But he's looking for a new job. And everyone was wondering what the heck happened in order for the Giants to move away from a great defensive coordinator. And Wink Martindale is a great defensive coordinator. He really is. There is no defense like him in the NFL, and that's why it's so hard to game plan against for the New York Giants. That's why their defense actually kept them in a lot of games this year when the offense really wasn't very good. But with Wink Martindale gone, now you wonder, okay, if Daboll and Martindale can't get along, how do we know that the next guy is going to get along with what Daboll wants? And this is part of the process, and this is part of the problem that the Giants currently have, and really the problem that the Jets don't have. Because again, it's not just the defensive coordinator. Apparently, according to this report, and I'm going to read a little tidbit here for you so you guys can understand. But this goes further than just the Wink Martindale, Brian Daboll argument and the feud. But essentially, and it talks about Mike Kafka, offensive coordinator for the Giants. He was the play caller for a little bit, but essentially here it goes. Giants' young offensive coordinator, however, has received the brunt of Daboll's fury. According to numerous team sources, he is constantly second-guessed. Daboll, who got the Giants' job due to his work with Josh Allen's Bills offense, ran a consistently hot temperament as his offense cratered, beginning with a 40-0 Week 1 loss to the Cowboys. He often took it out on his OC. He would make Kafka run the ball, and then if he called a run and he didn't like the call, he would bleep him and just curse him to the nth degree. I ask you, Jet fans that are watching, would Robert Saleh do that? Do we think Robert Saleh would do that? From the conversations I've had with him, from the conversations I've had with that coaching staff, absolutely not. And it goes further. It really goes further. To point it, going back to Week 1, that Cowboys loss, a awful showing. Daboll was ripping the defense so frantically and constantly after positive Cowboys plays that it was interfering with Martindale's play calling process. Several sources said Martindale asked Daboll to stop so he could get the next play in. The next week, Shane was on the headsets to monitor the situation for himself. You're living on the edge every week, a source said, of working on Daboll. It makes it tough to do your job. We know that Brian Daboll is very tight-lipped. I've been in those press conference rooms. I've covered the Jets. I've also been little pieces here and there with the Giants. Brian Daboll doesn't really give a lot in press conferences. And it's frustrating sometimes, right? As a reporter, you want to get the right information. You want to get all the information you possibly can. And if the coach isn't giving it to you, well, you're kind of stuck. You're kind of stuck. But Leonard here, able to talk to people, I think Martindale is certainly one of them. I think certainly an assistant of Martindale as well. But someone had to talk, whether it be from this coaching staff or ones that have already left. Let's do the math here, 2 + 2. But when you look at the concerns with the Giants, and again, Jets fans, if you are disagreeing with me, let me know. But when I read that piece today, again, a great piece from Pat Leonard, and we're going to get to sources and anonymous sources and all the hoopla that surrounds it, because I know a lot of Giants fans are pissed off about this report. They're pissed off. But when was the last time we heard something like that from Robert Saleh? When was the last time Robert Saleh really took it to a player or a coach in the press, out in the open? You don't really see that. And it pissed off a lot of Jet fans, too, this year. I got into plenty of arguments on Jake Asman's show this entire year where people are like, well, we need strong leadership, and he needs to go out there and talk to the press and say, this isn't okay. But my response was always, wait, you want him to be out in public about this? You want him to be openly attacking players and coaches? You want him to be so aggressive in how he handles himself that there's no one going to be comfortable coaching or playing with him? That doesn't seem right. You know, I said earlier today on my Twitter feed, in terms of process and how they handle themselves in the organization, based on this report, I'll take Robert Saleh 10 times out of 10. And people will look at the playoff win for the Giants last year. People will look at it and say, well, Daboll's won a playoff game. He has the right to talk. Saleh's done nothing. Guys, how you are when things are bad unveils who you are. Character, if character's who you are when no one's looking, and integrity is being the same person no matter where the storm is. Give me that guy, the even keel, honest. We're going to stay the same way. I trust you guys. I believe in you guys. Give me that coach over one that's pointing fingers and attacking his own coaches and going after certain players. This is night and day. Night and day. And again, the Giants have that first year with Brian Daboll. They had the first year. They won the playoff game. It was an awesome turnaround. And the Jets haven't been to the playoffs in 13 years. And that's why a lot of people are like, well, Saleh can't talk. We can't compare this because the Jets are nothing and Saleh's done nothing. What do you think gets built first when building a proper championship contender? It's the culture. It's the culture. And the way the culture is built instills and allows greatness to be consistent when it eventually happens. The culture that Robert Saleh has built is very, very strong. It's just a matter of they need to put it together. They need to stay healthy. They need to have a quarterback that can play consistently. Do we know that culture's there in New York with the Giants? We saw it the first year. We saw a lot of great things happen the first year. Daniel Jones looked really good. The defense was really strong. The offensive line was clearly improved. But that was also with Saquon Barkley rushing for over 1,000 yards. Had a great year. The defense was really, really good. And Saquon might be a free agent. Saquon might walk in free agency this year. He might be gone. And then what happens to your offense? What happens to your offensive line? What happens to your defense now? I know a lot of people turn and look at Xavier McKinney and look at Kayvon Thibodeau as reasons why they let go of Wink Martindale and they'll be able to blossom on their own. But how do we know a good defensive coordinator is going to walk in and get the best out of Bobby Okereke? Get the best out of Dexter Lawrence? Dexter Lawrence is an all-pro defensive tackle with Wink Martindale. We sure that system's going to be the same? This report today by Pat Leonard, again, Giant fans can argue about the validity of it and all this other stuff. I'm telling you, these aren't made-up stories. As a reporter, someone who has been in these rooms, these aren't stories you just make up. It is work that you do the entire time you're there. You're at the facility. You're trying to get the stories. You're trying to get sources. You have to double and triple check. This is the New York Daily News. I would kill to be in a situation like that right now. They're not just going to take reporters that, oh, Johnny thinks this, so he's going to report it as fact. That's not how it works. That's not how any of it works. So Leonard is coming from a situation and has spoken to people that have been involved in this situation. And that's a problem. It's a problem that there are coaches and people willing to talk about how bad it's gotten under Brian Daboll. And they're not the only ones. The Giants aren't the only ones. Giants aren't the only ones dealing with this. But notice, the Jets aren't. The Jets' concern right now, the Jets' real concern right now, is trying to figure out a way to get into the playoffs and improve the roster from last year. That continuity can be extremely helpful, as opposed to teams that are always changing their coaching staffs. And we're going to get to one of them later on. Again, Football with Faria. Nick Faria here. You guys got a comment, a question? We got one from J-Dubs right here, talking about Brian Daboll. And so many Jets fans think we have it so bad. Look at this report, SMH. I agree, J-Dubs. I absolutely agree. Because if we're going to get on Robert Saleh for the win-loss record, what exactly are the Jets in the news for most of the time? It's for a disgruntled player, Aaron Rodgers running his mouth on Pat McAfee. But it's not because the coaching staff is getting into arguments left and right. There are some things the Jets need to improve on. They do. They really, really do. But if I'm judging, because again, coaching is not just you do this, you do this, you do this, and you win. Improvement is not a linear path forward. There's going to be bumps and bruises and peaks and valleys. And you have to get past that. And I agreed with Woody Johnson to keep Robert Saleh for another year, because I felt that if you're going to give him the opportunity, if you're going to give him Aaron Rodgers, then give him Aaron Rodgers. He didn't have him last year. Give him an opportunity to play with them and see how far they go. See what they can do. And again, that is absolutely why I look at this and I say, Robert Saleh is vindicated, at least in terms of speaking to the media. He's not vindicated in wins and losses because he has to change that. But with the way he talks to the media, with the way fans are angry about what he does or doesn't do in front of the media, he's absolutely vindicated. And it's not even close. You want this? Do Jet fans really want what Brian Daboll is doing? Would you really want that for your team, your organization, to have a head coach that's so difficult to work with, that a defensive coordinator is literally walking out the door? There's nothing about it that looks good on Brian Daboll. And let's say that Martindale's the one who spoke, gave this whole thing out, and is looking like a diva. Let's just say that's the case. How do we know that Mike Kafka isn't the next one to go? Mike Kafka is a young coach coming from the Andy Reid tree. And what happens if Mike Kafka leaves? We still got time. There's no guarantee he stays. There's a lot of problems with the Giants, and I will say again, if you're the Jets, you have to be very, very thankful for the situation you have right now. I know you're 7-10. I know you haven't been to the playoffs in 13 years, but you look at where the team is going, and you can't tell me that you aren't at least a little bit more excited about where your team is at than a team like the Giants. Can't do it. Sorry. You beat them this year. You beat the Giants this year. They were a playoff team. You beat the Eagles this year. They were a playoff team. The Bills, playoff team. They're about to go on to the divisional round. You've beaten some really good teams. The Texans, you blew out the Texans. There's a lot to like about the Jets. And the fact that this coaching staff remains the same, I may not like some of the moves that they decided to keep. I still am a little nervous about the Keith Carter retention. Still worried about no moves made, strength and conditioning wise. But when compared to this Giants stuff, it's not even close. It's not even close. It makes everything else look like fairies and just perfection when you're lining it up with this report that Pat Leonard did on the New York Daily News. It's not even close. Sorry, you guys don't have it that bad. No shucks. It's okay. You're supposed to be happy about that. Be happy. It's okay. It's just it's not something that I look at. And again, the one constant theme today that I've heard pretty much everywhere, because again, I follow the Jets, I follow the Eagles, I follow the NFL, and right now there is a very large contingent of Cowboy fans who want Mike McCarthy fired and cleaning house. Dak Prescott gone, McCarthy gone, Dan Quinn gone. People are getting angry at Micah Parsons. Sure, he can go too. Go right ahead. He's one of the best defensive players of all of the modern era. Please get out of the division. Please. They want him fired. The Giants have coaching problems. And they're not the only team. Because as happy as I was on Saturday watching the Green Bay Packers go up 30 against the Dallas Cowboys, it ended up winning by 16 because of a couple garbage time touchdowns from Prescott. This morning I woke up thinking, hey, the Cowboys are out. No matter what happens, it'll be okay. Let's see if the Eagles can win a playoff game here. And then a couple reports came out. First, essentially asking if Jalen Hurts' leadership should be in question. Talking about his stoicness not being what the team needs during this slide. I'll get to that in a minute. And then the next one, and probably even more damning, is the latest piece out of ESPN. Tim McManus wrote it. Great piece talking about the issues with Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff. Essentially, as part of the conversation and part of the article, most of the time during this slide, and they've lost 5 of 6, Nick Sirianni would be overruling Brian Johnson. And it's caused so much confusion on offense that no one knows who's calling the plays anymore. It fits a lot, especially what we've seen in the last few weeks where there's just ultimate confusion, especially on offense. And it's begged the question of if Philadelphia loses, if and when Philadelphia loses tonight, in a game that's on in about 40 minutes, is this it for Nick Sirianni? Will the Eagles actually fire a head coach that has been to the playoffs in 3 consecutive years? Now, before I get to the speculation and all that, I do want to point out Jay Glazer of Fox Sports did say that Nick Sirianni was safe. There's not been anything he has heard to this point that says Nick Sirianni is in danger. And this is the same guy that broke that Sean Desai was being demoted as defensive coordinator. So essentially, every major reporter from national network sites has said that Nick Sirianni is safe. But I know a lot of people aren't happy with him. And a lot of people are really antsy to try to make a change and believe that he can't change and he's the reason for this downslide. But again, I go back to this. Nick Sirianni is in his 3rd year as head coach. And the same thing with Brian Daboll. If Brian Daboll changes and understands his deficiencies, very much like Tom Coughlin did in 2007 and 2011, then there's going to be hope for the Giants. Same thing with Nick Sirianni. If Nick Sirianni understands his deficiencies and understands that sometimes he just needs to step away and allows Brian Johnson to develop as a play caller, then maybe the Eagles are going to be okay next year. I still think they're done. They're not winning the Super Bowl. They're probably not winning tonight. But next year, a year removed from the Super Bowl loss, a lesser schedule, I think they can win. I think it'd be competitive. Maybe go on a run. The NFC's still weak. As of right now, there's no Tom Brady coming into the conference. They can win that conference, depending if everyone's healthy and what happens and how they add to the team in the offseason. But to say that Nick Sirianni's on the hot seat or there's things that he's doing and is doing wrong and all this other stuff, I always just tend to pump the brakes. Same thing with the Jets. This entire show and the week that I've done it, I've always said there's an extreme positive, an extreme negative, and then the absolute middle ground. And I would rather be on the middle ground as a reporter and middle ground as a fan than be on either ultimate side of extreme. Because there's the extreme positive that it's, well, Nick Sirianni's going to be okay. It's not Nick Sirianni, it's the players. But then when it's not the players, it's the coordinators and all that other stuff. And the extreme negative is everything's bad. The Eagles need to blow it up. They're never going to be good again. Jalen Hurts has regressed. Nick Sirianni needs to be fired. They need to bring in Bill Belichick. Good God. The middle ground, though, is, okay, they've played the hardest schedule in football, one of the hardest schedules in football history, in a row. You dealt with injuries more than you did the previous year. And you overreacted to a lot of moves. And it was just split-second overreactions. The move to Sean Desai to demote him was an overreaction. And a poor one at that by Sirianni. The changes on offense, they were poor. The offense has been fine, but it's not been the lethal group they were last year. All that stuff's okay, but is that enough for Nick Sirianni to be fired? The one thing that I talked about with my dad today, I jump on the call with him before every Steelers game because he is a Steelers fan, and we talked before an Eagles game as well. And the one thing I said was, Nick Sirianni has had one miserable month. The Eagles were 10-1 after Thanksgiving. Calendar flipped to January. It flipped to December. And they lost 5 of 6. They've been awful. Defense has been horrific. Offense hasn't been very good. The only thing that's looked good is special teams. And everyone has panicked in the locker room, in the front office, in the fan base, in the media. Everyone's panicked. But is an atrocious month enough to fire the head coach? It's an atrocious month enough to fire a head coach that's been to the playoffs every year he's been the leader of your organization. Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. 2016. It's been 7 years. It's about to be 8. That game's not already over. Hasn't had a losing season. Hasn't won a playoff game in 8 years. And he is as safe can be in Pittsburgh. And Nick Sirianni is going to be on the hot seat after 3 straight winning seasons, 3 playoff appearances. Okay. The overreaction, once again, kicking in. There's no need to make a move, but we have to make a move. Something has to change. We're wasting Jalen Hurts. We're wasting an unbelievable offense. Do the Eagles not have the best offensive line coach in football in Jeff Stoutland? Yes. So if Jeff Stoutland's there, we can assume that the offensive line is always going to be a strength of the team. Hassan Reddick still under contract. Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, all of them are still under contract. The offense, everyone's under contract. They're going to get Devontae Smith and Landon Dickerson locked up long term. This team's really good. And the team's going to be good for a long time. But to sit here and say that the Eagles are wasting players, wasting years, I always find it foolish. Like, what are we talking about? They had just gotten to the Super Bowl last year. They were just there. And they got to the playoffs the very next year. You know how hard that is to do? They have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs this year. The only difference is the AFC West is so bad, and the NFC East has the Cowboys that are a playoff team. A laughable playoff team, but still a playoff team. It's a fundamental reason why the Eagles didn't win the division. And I look and I see, okay, the fundamental problems. They lost both play calling coordinators. They lost a lot of players in free agency because they were going to. There was just no way you could re-sign all of them. They replenished a lot in the draft, but that wasn't going to save them. So we're angry at the fact that Philadelphia isn't as good as they were last year. Did we expect them to be as good? Was that the expectation? Everyone I spoke to understood that the year with the Eagles weren't going to be as good. The schedule was tougher. The team wasn't as talented. And they still got to 11 wins. They could win a playoff game. I don't think it's going to happen. But to sit here and say that this team is completely underachieved, I think is wrong. Because people just forget how difficult it is to win in football. They started 10-1 the year after they won the Super Bowl. Do we know how psychotically good that is? Psychotically good. Against the toughest schedule in football. They beat Miami. They beat Kansas City. I just don't get it. I really don't. It'll never not make sense to me. And again, Eagles are about to kick off in 30 minutes or so. I'm going to try to tailor this to an Eagles pregame as well, talking about the team and what they got to do against Tampa Bay. But again, the more I say this, I'll say this again. I have no expectations today. I think they're going to get killed. And the Bucs didn't look good, and they haven't looked good the last couple of weeks. But I trust them right now more than this team. This team's broken. It's broken. No issue in saying that. They're done. If they beat Tampa Bay, they're going to get blown the roof out of in Detroit. They're not a Super Bowl team this year, and that's okay. Because they were a Super Bowl team last year. And it's hard to do that again. It's really freaking hard. So to sit here and say Nick Sirianni needs to be fired and they need to get competent coaches and all this other stuff, can we let these guys develop? Development is a word everyone wants to talk about and no one wants to use and implement. To develop a player is the same as to develop a coach. A coach needs development too. It's not just walk in and immediately know what to do at all points. It's not. And people and fans in Philadelphia are clamoring. Brian Johnson needs to be replaced. Nick Sirianni needs to be replaced. They don't know what they're doing. It's incompetence. So let them learn. Let them grow. This isn't rocket science. This isn't Madden where you plug in a player and everything goes okay. It's beyond moronic that we're even talking about this. A team that has been to the playoffs in 3 straight years, went to the Super Bowl last year and lost their 2 play calling coaches, lost 8 free agents, started a brand new defense, and went 11-6 the very next year after losing the Super Bowl in heartbreaking fashion. And we're talking about them and if they should decide to fire their coaching staff. And it's not, and I will say this, Jay Glazer said he's like, well, the expectations in Philly are different. And, it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I think they all just got caught up in how good they were and have been and expected that to happen all the way throughout. I don't like that excuse with Philly. Philadelphia's smart. Eagle fans are smart. They are. And they just, for some reason, I don't understand it. They have just been so moronic. Nothing they've done, nothing they've been clamoring for makes sense. Okay, so the offense is bad this year. You don't just change it up. You don't just fire everyone the minute the offense gets stale. You let the coach, the head coach, try and find a way to fix it the next year. That's progress. That's process. Not this stupid shit where we're wondering if they should change the coordinator and change the systems and all that. It's ridiculous. It makes what Jet fans are doing with Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, it makes what they're doing completely understandable. And I completely disagree with them. I do believe Robert Saleh deserves another year. I do believe Joe Douglas should get the final year of his contract here to see if he can build a winner. I believe all of that. But I also understand Jets fans who are angry and want changes because there's been very little change. With the Eagles, what are we complaining about? They had a bad December. They had an atrocious December. That's enough to get a head coach fired? Oh, well, and it happened to Andy Reid, and it happened to Chip Kelly, and it happened to Doug Peterson. And the comical thing about these reporters that say that, and I just fundamentally disagree with that, because Andy Reid's final year, they went 4-12. Chip Kelly's final year, they went 7-8. Doug Peterson's final year, 4-11-1. They were going to fire Doug Peterson after that year. They were going to run it back. They were going to run it back the next year. And what happened was when Jeffrey Lurie spoke to Doug Peterson and said, okay, what changes are you going to make offensively? Because the offense is broken. What changes are you going to make? And Doug Peterson said, I'm not changing a damn thing. And Jeffrey Lurie said, well, that's unacceptable. You can't look at a 4-11-1 team and not change anything. We talk about the Jets not changing things at 7-10. Think about a 4-11-1 team 2 years removed from the Super Bowl and keeping everybody. That's what Doug Peterson wanted. That's why he was fired. It wasn't because they went 4-11-1. They were going to run it back. So the end of Doug Peterson was not because of the results. It was because he wasn't going to change. And the one thing that we have seen, from Nick Sirianni over 3 years is that he is willing to change. He's willing to make drastic changes very quickly. Gave up play calling 5 weeks into his career as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Said, you know what? It's not working. Shane Steichen, here you go. They get to the Super Bowl the next year. This year, doesn't even get to the full end of the season. Sean Desai, it's not working. Here you go, Matt Patricia. I hate the move. It's clearly blown up in their face, but he is very quick to try and see if things can change. He's very quick to making changes. He's very quick to learning. That's the staple of the Nick Sirianni era in Philadelphia. So why not give him that opportunity to change? You can't change in a month. You can't demand that change in the month of December. It's ridiculous. So yes, I do think Nick Sirianni should stay. I think it's moronic that we're even having to talk about this. And I'm very glad that Jay Glazer came out and said that Nick Sirianni is safe. He hasn't heard anything. I'm very glad. Because it makes what a lot of Jets fans are angry about rational. The Jets fans are angry because they haven't been to the playoffs in 13 years. They have reasons to be angry. They have reasons to want to clean house. I don't agree with it, but they have reasons to. What is Philadelphia's excuses? They've had a miserable month? That's the extent? You guys sound like petulant like children right now. I don't want this toy because this toy is no longer shiny and new. Good God. And listen, I said it before. I think Philadelphia is going to lose today. I think they will probably be blown out. Every other game in this playoff series has been blowouts. I think they could absolutely be blown out. Because they've looked terrible. They're terrible. They're done. Does that mean they should fire everyone? No. Because you don't need to always make a reactionary move when something happens. Patience is something an organization should have. It's what the Jets have. And this will look very positively if Robert Saleh, if they don't make the playoffs next year, and Woody Johnson cleans house, it will look positively on the next coaching search because teams will see that Woody Johnson gave Robert Saleh a long leash and gave him an opportunity to fix mistakes and learn from them. They'll be able to get the coach they want because they've shown an affinity for patience, an affinity to grow. Philadelphia's not going to get that if they were to fire Nick Sirianni. They're not going to get that kind of luxury. Got a couple questions here. Mostly Jets, so that's perfectly fine. Let's talk about it. J-Dubs, once again, if the Jets move Tipton to guard, do you see them drafting a center or signing one? Great question, J-Dubs. Great question. I think Connor McGovern could absolutely be back next year. And if he's back next year, I think the conversation could be had to move Joe Tippmann to left guard if they want to move away from Laken Tomlinson. I think that's absolutely in the picture. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. If I was a betting man, I think Mr. Tippmann is going to be the starting center because he looked really good. He looked really good this year, guys. He really did. And I spoke to him a lot. I probably talked to him more than any other player this year. Great guy, very intelligent, cerebral. He's a great player. And I personally put him wherever he wants. And it sounds like he wants to play center. Sounds like to me. If I'm a hater, great work as always, brother. Like your inside analysis on Jets. I may not always agree, but appreciate your honesty. I'm a lot higher on front office and coaching staff sans Carter than most. Listen, I completely agree. I'm high on this staff. I'm high on both front office and coaching staff. The problem that Jets fans have had, and it's understandable, is that they walked into this season as a perennial Super Bowl team. And everyone knew it. Everyone expected it. I expected it. With the tough schedule, and you lost your quarterback week 1. You lost your quarterback 4 plays in to week 1. So this season was going to be a wash no matter what. No matter what. And people outside of the Jets used this to make fun of the Jets. Oh, they didn't do this. They didn't do that. They didn't do this. Fans inside the Jets used it as an excuse to point blame on the front office for their deficiencies. And they're not blameless. They're not blameless. They could have done a lot more to help the team out this season, and they didn't do it. I've been on the record saying it as much. There's a lot of things they've done well. They have their center of the future. They have their right guard of the future. You have an all-pro caliber receiver, an all-pro caliber weapon at running back. You have a franchise quarterback that is one of the greatest throwers of the football in league history. That's 5 players. That's 5 blue chip players right now on offense that you can walk up and say, we can win. We're just going to need some help. On defense, it's even better. All-pro defensive tackle, 2 all-pro linebackers. By the way, congratulations, Quincy Williams. All-pro corner, 2 other Pro Bowl corners. This team is really good, and they've got a lot of talent. It's just a matter of putting it all together and hoping that injuries don't derail them. Because does the Jets offense look different if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback next year? I certainly think so. They're not going to be 30th. Let's say they're average. Let's say they're average next year. Let's say they're 15th ranked, 15th, 16th ranked in the NFL next year, the Jets. You mean to tell me, with the defense all returning, that they wouldn't get to 11 wins? At minimum, 11 wins with a 15th ranked offense. Or 16th ranked. Let's just go there. You would beat the Patriots. You would beat the Raiders. You would beat the Falcons. You'd beat the Chiefs. Because as great as Zach Wilson played, the fumble killed him. That's 4 wins right there. That gets you to 11. Any turnaround against the Chargers, that's probably 12. Do they beat the Browns? Probably. I'll give you the loss to Miami. I'll give you the losses. I'll give you some of the blowout losses. But they could beat Cleveland if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. You're talking about 12, 13 wins. Right there. And I get it. I understand the injury concerns and the consistency of the injury concerns. I get all of that. I get the offensive line problems. But you can't tell me that this team isn't primed and ready for a championship caliber run next year. Can't do it. There's too much talent. There's too much talent on this team. Other teams would kill for this kind of talent. You don't think the Carolina Panthers or the Chicago Bears would be killing for the kind of talent that this team has? Hell, I'm talking about the Eagles. Every team on the planet would be begging for these kind of receivers, these kind of defensive linemen, these kind of offensive linemen. There's these people that are not grateful for what they have. And for Jet fans, it's very hard because 7-10, the playoff drought. But the Eagles fans that are angry and want changes, just substantial changes, look like whiny babies. And for Jet fans that want changes, while it's far more understandable, I look at it and say, I think it's just misguided. I would call Jets fans a little misguided. I think Eagle fans are just spoiled. Absolutely spoiled. There's no other way to put it. We're 11 wins, 10-1 start after a Super Bowl loss. And you were surprised that they ran out of gas. Sorry. They're going to lose today. We got a game in 15 minutes. I'm about to log off. Sorry, they're probably going to lose today. It's okay. We'll see you next year. But don't go sitting here saying that there needs to be fundamental changes because the quarterback is regressing and the play calling's terrible and the defense stinks. Most of these guys are under contract next year. Most of the players are under contract and still very talented. They're still going to be really good. Sorry. They're going to be really good next year. At least they should, unless injuries derail them. My God. Here I am getting angry about the Eagles. We got a game in 15 minutes. So for all of you that have watched, thank you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Probably going to go in the morning tomorrow. Talk about the Eagles. Talk about where they go from there. We'll sprinkle in a little Jet stuff as well as always. See what the coaching carousel holds. Maybe Bill Belichick is heading to Dallas. One final laugh about the Cowboys. Holy Jesus, what a win that was for Green Bay. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you guys for jumping on. And I'll see you. Happy game day.